Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
They say fools rush in, but why? And is it really so foolish? We might ask Romeo and Juliet, or more realistically, George and Amal. Welcome to Soul CPR. Let's talk about love and what makes people fall fast, and is it really a mistake? Let's start with the psychology of falling in love. It's really about the brain. It's the brain on dopamine and oxytocin and adrenaline in the early stages. So it's really a chemical cocktail, if you will, and it is intoxicating. So if we break it down into the varied ingredients, the dopamine is really that feel-good neurotransmitter that spikes when we experience pleasure. So falling in love triggers the same reward system as drugs, making it addictive. And then there's the other ingredient, oxytocin, and that is known as the cuddle hormone, and it fosters bonding and trust, sometimes before we really know someone. And another ingredient in that cocktail is adrenaline, that racing heart and excitement, the butterflies. It's that same fight or flight response, which can make new love feel thrilling and sometimes even dangerous. And then there's a drop actually in serotonin, and early stages of love can lower serotonin levels, which is linked to obsessive thinking. And this is why people in new relationships can't stop thinking about their partner. Now, when it gets to the speed of falling in love, attachment styles can determine or have a role in that. So, what is an attachment style? You may have heard about these. So, first and foremost, it's either secure or insecure. And according to developmental psychologists, it's part of human nature. And it's related to our capacity to form an attachment as an infant to our mothers or our primary caregivers initially, and then to others who are most present and responsible for our very survival. So, psychologists have distinguished different insecure attachment styles based on the quality of caregiver interaction, and these attachment styles become relevant to behavior patterns that present in adult relationships and romantic love. So, for example, someone with an anxious attachment may crave closeness, yet fear abandonment. And this leads them to dive into relationships quickly. And it also has them hold on way too long after signs indicate that the relationship is unhealthy or even simply not right for them. And then there's avoidant types of attachment. And someone with this style might resist rushing in, but can also get caught up in the passion because they're having that same cocktail, right? Before they pull away. And that leaves their lovers confused because it looked the same as the anxious attachment. Then there's secure attachment, actually, who are more likely to pace themselves, can still get caught up and swept away in that chemistry. So, again, it's all about what's happening in the brain and this immediate rush of this being bathed in this cocktail. So it is intoxicating. We do fall in love, and a fall happens pretty quickly. Now, let's talk about romantic idealism versus reality and why we believe in the one. And if we get caught up in that too quickly, what might happen? So, of course, there's the fairy tale conditioning. So, from childhood, we're told love is instant, or it seems to be in a lot of the stories. And princes and princesses fall in love at first sight. And then we've got Hollywood and pop culture and movies and books and social influencers who may glorify instant attraction, leading us to believe that it's normal and the way it happens for most. Happens for some. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then there's destiny believers who think that love should be effortless and immediate, versus the growth believers, or growth mindset, if you will, who see love as something that develops over time. And, those who rush in often lean towards, which one would you guess? That destiny mindset. So let's take a little bit closer look at these and how that might relate to the concept of a soulmate that we so often hear. Well, a destiny believer really is someone who will think that certain events or people or outcomes are really part of a larger plan, whether it's divine or cosmic or fated. And this could include meeting the one or experiencing just particular milestones in life. So I'm going to come back to that. So in romantic destiny and relationships, destiny believers feel there's a predetermined connection with a significant other, one that's often linked to the concept of soulmates or twin flames, something else you may have heard of, the idea that someone is uniquely and perfectly suited for you. Now, the soulmate concept, for many believing in destiny, means believing in soulmates, which may be defined as people who are destined to come into your life because of a cosmic connection. Soulmates are seen as the perfect match for someone, not just in terms of chemistry, but in a deeper spiritual sense, perhaps. That might be the differentiating factor. So if we look at destiny versus soulmate, soulmate believers might think there's only one person out there for them. Destiny believers may take a broader view, seeing many relationships as part of a larger destiny. They might believe that, say, every romantic partner, even if not the one, has a purpose in their life path, teaching them lessons and bringing them closer to true love. So you hear the difference? Now, when we think about fools rushing in and why we fall in love so fast, destiny belief might come into play when people feel they found the one almost immediately. And for some, the intensity of the connection can feel like fate, the universe aligning perfectly. However, it's important to ask whether, if you're having this or if you've ever experienced this, it's important to ask about your gut feelings, and are they based on intuition and real compatibility? Or are they simply attributing a deep connection to destiny or soulmate beliefs? And I see people confusing the two. Is this just you believe it so much that it's checking those boxes, if you will? Or is there really compatibility with this person? Now, here's a cautionary note for my destiny believers out there. While it's beautiful to believe in fate, it's also important to make sure that you're not rushing into a relationship just because it feels like it's meant to be. True love, no matter how destined, still requires effort, communication, and mutual respect. Would you agree? Now, there's the role of emotional and situational factors that happen when we're thinking about love and falling in love. Sometimes there's that rebounding from heartbreak that makes people fall fast, right? Sometimes we rush in to fill a void rather than for a true connection. We also have that fear of being alone and societal pressure around us that can push us into fast moving relationships. And often staying, as I mentioned before, in the wrong ones too long. And then there's just timing and life circumstances, external factors like a big life change, a major event that can make new romance feel more intense than it actually is. When you put all the pieces together of what's happening, you might get a more clear picture of the role that this relationship is playing in your life. There's risks of rushing in, as you can imagine. What would those be? When we go too fast, we tend to ignore red flags because passion will what? Blind us. Cliches are cliche for a reason because there's truth in their origin. When we are caught up in the excitement of a new relationship, we tend to overlook warning signs that would otherwise be obvious. And some common red flags that get dismissed in a lot of these whirlwind romances are the love bombing, because this is that excessive affection and attention and grand gestures that happen really, really soon. And people start saying, I've never felt this way before. I want to spend every moment with you. And this happens within days, often hours sometimes, and certainly within weeks. It's a lot of attention and affection. And when all this is happening with that love cocktail in the brain, love bombing, this is absolutely taking you down, if you will. And when you start talking about moving in or marriage or deep emotional connections that early, making that commitment, have you really gotten to know the person? And this type of love bombing tends to start bringing you in and isolating you, taking all of your time, pulling you away from friends and family. And you have to notice these things if this is happening early on. And are you noticing inconsistencies when they say and do something that don't quite match up, but your infatuation keeps you from questioning it? So here's an example. There's someone named Rachel who met a man on a dating app, and within 2 weeks, he was talking about their father, meeting his family, even suggesting that she move in. And she ignored these small inconsistencies in his stories. And a few months in, after she moved in, his charm had faded, and she realized he was highly controlling and emotionally manipulative. So Rachel's story is one of many that I meet in support groups, or I hear in support groups when I meet people. So here's your Soul CPR tip. Give yourself time to observe someone's patterns before making big commitments. The honeymoon phase trap. That's another thing. What happens when the high fades? Well, that early stage of a relationship is often fueled by that novelty and excitement, but this phase isn't meant to last forever. That's why it's called a honeymoon, right? After a few months, real personalities emerge and that dopamine rush will decline. You start sobering up, if you will. So any relationship that was built only on chemistry may not survive once reality sets in. So think of whirlwind celebrity marriages that only last a few months. And the Vegas marriages seemed like passion at first, and then they collapse under the weight of real life challenges. So you have to ask yourself, do I love this person, or do I love the way they make me feel right now? Because right now may be different than next month. And that's why allowing some time for a relationship to develop can be the better choice. All right, I believe it's time for our first break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the science of slow love and why taking your time leads to deeper connections for most of us. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soul CPR. Thank you for tuning in today. And we are talking about falling in love and that rush, either rushing into it or the rush of chemicals that keep us there. So the science of slow love is what we're going to talk about now, and why taking your time can lead to deeper connections. Studies show that relationships that develop over time have stronger foundations. And when people take time to build emotional intimacy before diving in physically or committing fully, they're more likely to stay together long term. So, slow burning love, if you would like to say, allows you to evaluate if you have shared values, if you're emotionally compatible, and how you handle stress or conflict together, right? There's something called the 3-month rule that I want to talk to you about. And it's about giving yourself at least 3 months to truly get to know someone before making major commitments. The 3-month rule is not a scientifically established principle, but rather a widely referenced relationship guideline based on psychological insights and dating trends. And it suggests that it takes about 3 months for initial infatuation, the honeymoon phase, to fade, allowing you to see someone's true character. So that honeymoon phase timeline, according to Dr. Helen Fisher, who is a biological anthropologist and expert on love, says early stage romantic love is heavily influenced by that cocktail we were talking about, the dopamine and those other hormones, creating a sense of euphoria and obsession. And this effect tends to last a few months before stabilizing. So you have to sober up from the intoxication from the brain cocktail. Bottom line, you're going to sober up in approximately 90 days. So let's give it 3 months. Another reason psychologists say is that around that 90-day mark, people start to reveal their natural habits. So if they were masking, if they were hiding their true self, their true nature, it's going to start to be revealed. So think back to it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be a friendship, just meeting someone new. If they masked, did the mask come off around 3-month mark in your relationship? Do you ever have a roommate, perhaps, that you realized they weren't who you thought they were? This type of thing, think about that. Attachment styles start becoming more apparent as that initial excitement wanes as well. Think about that. So many dating experts, such as Matthew Hussey and Dr. Seth Meyers, recommend also waiting at least 3 months before making major commitments like moving in together or an engagement or any long-term commitment, because this allows you some time to at least assess long-term compatibility. All right. So, what about when it does work? Can it work? Rushing into love. Let's think about that. If caution is usually wise, are there some fast moving relationships that do last? There are. And the key is intentionality. When a couple rushes in with awareness and alignment, it can actually lead to a strong and lasting bond. If two people already share a deep connection, whether it's through shared history, for example, or values or mutual trust, a fast moving relationship can be built on something more than just infatuation. So, for example, rekindled love, childhood sweethearts who reconnect years later and realize their connection never faded. This is a common phenomena in the age of what we call silver divorce. Divorce in the 50s and older, or perhaps even due to death of a partner, reconnecting with a childhood flame tends to heat up quickly and lead to marriages that last until truly death do they part. And then what about friends to lovers? Do you believe friends can cross that line? Yeah. Psychologists say two best friends who have already built emotional intimacy can make the transition to romance fairly smoothly. Why? Why would all of this work? In either case, the childhood rekindling or the friends to lovers, it's going to work because they already know each other's personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses. There's already acceptance in that. There's already respect. There's existing trust and emotional safety. They're not chasing the thrill of something new. They're literally deepening something that already exists. Another time when this kind of fast-paced love can actually be successful is when both partners are emotionally mature. And I've seen this when people have done their inner work, like, therapy, coaching, self-reflection, past relationship lessons. They're more capable of recognizing true compatibility quickly because they've learned to trust themselves. They don't confuse chemistry with compatibility. They assess both. So, for an example, let's say a couple meets, both divorced in their 40s, and they're clear on what they want because they've learned from their past mistakes. They've taken the time and the responsibility to heal, to get reacquainted with themselves and what they want. And so they recognize that in someone early on. They know what real compatibility is. And so they may move forward within the first year of this new relationship. And this works because they know their deal breakers, they communicate them, and they don't waste time. They're not rushing out of a place of fear or neediness or an attachment. It's more because they actually do see a clear future. They're able to communicate, as I said, their expectations, their intentions, their values, their long-term goals from the start. This is my second marriage. It's spelled out for you. This is exactly how ours began. And we did marry within that first year. When there's clear, honest communication, A whirlwind romance can work if both partners are completely transparent and emotionally open from day one. Asking deep questions early about finances and children and values, and sharing past traumas, understanding conflict resolution styles. All of this ensures respect, and respect is key throughout any successful relationship. So when a couple meets and falls in love quickly, but they can actively discuss what each of them want long term and how they're going to handle stress and conflict, and actually sit back and assess realistically, are we rushing because of external pressure or true compatibility? And when they can ensure that they have not just the communication intact, but they have the ability to compromise in a balanced way. And then that comes with respect, right? That the communication is respectful, compromise is respectful. Then they can make that commitment to move forward. Those are your 3 C's, people. That's what I like to call them, okay? Communication, compromise, and commitment for successful relationship. And this works because there's no fantasy-based assumptions. It's just raw honesty. And you can love someone and recognize that you can't move forward with them for various reasons, and that takes maturity. Now, when timing is right, sometimes life circumstances may create the perfect moment for a fast-moving relationship. And this could include situational urgency, like a job relocation or some kind of travel. And this can accelerate love without having to doom it if both partners approach it wisely. Like long distance love, right? I think of 2 people from different countries who meet while traveling, and they know they're going to be apart soon. So they may fast track their relationship with deep, meaningful conversations over the course of time rather than a dinner date once a week. They're on FaceTime having these really in-depth conversations for a while. So they may end up seemingly getting engaged quickly, but they've truly taken the time to understand each other's lifestyles and beliefs before marriage. That can work. And then there's that late in life, let's say people who meet in their 60s, knowing that they don't want to spend years dating before committing. And they may move quickly, but deliberately. So we talked about intentionality at the beginning of this. So what does that mean, quickly but deliberately? It means you're going to discuss family dynamics, lifestyle expectations, financial plans early on. And again, willing to let go if there's not alignment. You acknowledge the fast pace and you still make these intentional decisions, but you don't let passion override logic when you plan for real life compatibility. It's about growing together, right? Everybody who falls in love tends to do so quickly. But what's going to keep you together is commitment to growing as individuals and as partners. And that's choosing to love. So if both people are adapting and evolving, the fast start doesn't have to become a downfall. It's time for our second break, and when we come back, we'll have more with Soul CPR and some examples of some fast-tracked relationships that are working.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And we're back. I'm Ann Papayotti. You're listening to Soul CPR on the Bold Brave TV network. And we are talking about falling in love today, staying in love, and all of those things about rushing in love. And I was going to share some examples of the quick love that has worked out. And I mentioned Romeo and Juliet earlier, and we all know how that one ended. Maybe didn't work out so well. I also mentioned George and Amal Clooney. Well, they were engaged and married within 6 months. So Hollywood's former bachelor met Amal in July 2013, and sparks flew instantly, we're told. And I guess he proposed in April of the next year. 6 months later, he had proposed. Is what that doesn't add up to me. But anyway, they had a big lavish wedding 6 months after the proposal. There we go. There's your 6 months. And now they're parents to twins and still happily together. And why did this work? I would say it's because they're both established in their careers, emotionally mature, had shared passions, understanding those to be philanthropy, world affairs, and probably privacy. How about strong communication and respect, despite their fast start? Now, I think about my parents who dated 6 weeks and got married, and were married for 58 years before my dad's passing. Why did that relationship work? Now, while in 1947 it was the norm to marry young, I think, well, both were dependable, employed, had shared values, goals, and a vision for their future. I think that's a fair statement. I also believe they had strong communication, commitment, compromise, ability to compromise with respect, again, which is the foundation for any successful relationship. So look at couples you admire. Ask them why it has worked. You know, I found this one couple that I think is extremely interesting. John and Charlotte Henderson, married 83 years, considered the longest living couple by the Guinness Book of World Records, okay? Their love story began in 1934 when John spotted Charlotte at the University of Texas and was immediately smitten, he says. He said that he knew from the moment he met her that she was the one. Now, despite societal changes and financial struggles and global events that they had to live through, like World War II, they remained devoted and deeply in love. And they credited the longevity of their marriage to mutual respect, there you go again, kindness, and never going to bed angry. We've heard that one before, right? And when you think about intuition, John's instant knowing wasn't just chemistry. It was a gut feeling that Charlotte was his lifelong partner. and they built their relationship on shared values and a commitment to growing together, right? So, what do you think about intuition in love versus wishful thinking? We all love the idea of knowing when we've met the one, but how do you tell the difference between true intuition, that gut feeling, and wishful thinking, infatuation, or perhaps even fear based decision making? Well, here's a few things we can take into consideration. Real intuition feels calm, it's not desperate or overwhelming. Think about that. It's peaceful. There's no anxious rush. Remember those attachment styles we talked about? There's one that's anxiety ridden, one that's avoidant ridden. This was calm and peaceful. Wishful thinking may feel urgent, like you need to lock this person down before they disappear. My ex-husband literally said he needed to close the deal, that it was like a sales job and he needed to close it. So there you go. So a sense of peace. People have said it felt like coming home. There was something about it. So think about the feeling and truly get honest with yourself. Wishful thinking may be more, I need to make this work. I'll never find the one. I'm getting older. It's got to happen now. Those types of that mindset. Okay. So just test yourself. Do you feel at ease when you're with this person, or does it feel like an emotional roller coaster? And if this person suddenly pulled away, would you still trust that love is out there for you? Your brain is going to pick up on behavioral cues and energy and values quickly. And wishful thinking ignores those. It fills in gaps with fantasy. It makes excuses. The red flag is slightly pink, a faded red. There's an excuse for it. Okay? So intuition would be, I don't know why, but something about them just clicks. Our humor, our values, our energy align effortlessly, whereas wishful thinking might be, they're not really affectionate or communicative, but I feel like they're my soulmate anyway. Justification aligns with wishful thinking. So test it. Are you seeing this person for who they are or who you hope they'll be? And can you name at least 3 core values you both share? You need at least 90 days maybe to figure all that out, right? I don't know. Well, people who've experienced true love at first sight can usually point to real reasons why their connection is special. Real reasons. Reality, not fantasy. So wishful thinking will thrive on imagination over the reality. So, an example, we both grew up with the same values about family and we have the same sense of humor. It's effortless. There again. Wishful thinking. I just feel like we're meant to be together, even though we barely know each other. Okay? You got to test that. Sounds like gut, sounds like intuition, but be able to answer what's the real thing. Values, humor, effortless. Would you still feel this strongly if you had to list practical reasons why this relationship works? If a friend was describing their relationship to you in this way, without being able to give the practical reasons, would it sound wise? Or would you advise them to slow down? Now, true intuition is going to be backed by action and alignment. Intuition isn't just a feeling. There's also, you have to see consistency in their words and actions. That's the alignment. So intuition is like trust but verify, right? There's the verification that comes when you see their words and actions that validate your gut feeling. But wishful thinking would ignore mismatches and it will justify those inconsistencies. You have to really ask, are we both really invested in moving forward, or is it just one of us making all the effort? I just had this conversation recently with someone, and I think next week's show is going to be about being the one to give your all. But does this person's behavior match with your initial gut feeling about them? That's something you gotta, so it's an ongoing trust but verify, if you will. Another thing that we've learned through research is people who knew quickly and lasted, had longevity in the relationship, took time to nurture their love. While as wishful thinking forces the relationship to move fast without a solid foundation. And I experienced that in my first marriage. And looking back, I was swept up. I was in the love bombing. I was in all of that. And it just was this caught up in that rush without stepping back and taking time to really recognize what was happening in my world. Real intuition would be something like knowing that you clicked instantly, but still took the time to really to get to know each other and build something solid. And wishful thinking is we just met. And I think we should move in together next month because love shouldn't wait. Really kind of getting into that freedom thinking. But if your relationship is it progressing naturally and comfortably, or are you forcing the next step? That's your test. Step back and assess and reassess. And do you trust that even if you slow down, this connection will be strong? So when it comes to intuition and intention to equal lasting love, you got to remember real love isn't just a gut feeling. It's intuition lining up with reality and actions, and always with shared values. So remember, calm, aligned, respected, and excited, but emotionally safe and grounded in reality. All right? There's true intuition, and that's how you know your gut is leading you to a solid and successful relationship. All right. I don't even want to give the wishful thinking red flags, but let's go ahead. If it's wishful thinking, you're going to feel anxious and urgent, idealizing the person over knowing them. You're going to ignore the red flags and justify the bad behavior, and you're going to try to fast track love before it's ready. All right. It is time for our final break. And when we come back, I'll have closing thoughts for you on fools rushing into love on this April Fool's Day. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, everyone. If you were tuned in live, then we had a little tech issue and the show dropped off, but we are back and we're just going to conclude. And if I am repetitive, then it's okay to hear something more than once, right? So I wanted to just leave you with key takeaways from successful, fast-moving relationships. And what we know is that mutual maturity exists, that most of the couples who are successful were established in some way. They were emotionally self-aware. They had created a dependability in their lives and responsibility. There was a pattern of that in their lives. There was strong communication. They were open about their values, their goals, their expectations early on, and they had a commitment to growth. They were adaptable to one another's needs, and they supported their individual personal evolution, which is highly important. And they shared a life vision. Despite their whirlwind romance, perhaps, there was clarity on what they wanted to share long term and to build together. So your fast-paced love, if you want it to be built to last, you're going to want to reassess from time to time and ask the big questions and pay attention. Do we truly know each other beyond the honeymoon phase, that 3-month or 90-day window where we're bathed in those neurochemicals that intoxicate us and make us obsess over the person and perhaps get lost in a little bit of a fantasy? Are we aligned in core values? Or are we just so consumed with our attraction to this person? Are we making big decisions based on excitement or real compatibility? And can we communicate openly about our fears, our flaws, and the future? Because this is emotional safety. So when the masks come off, when the chemicals wear off, who are we and who are they? And who are we to one another? So these are the questions to assess, right, before making those long-term commitments. Now, as always, I appreciate you being here with me. And as this episode of Soul CPR comes to a close, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. And if today's episode resonated with you, please do share it with those who may need a lifeline of their own. You can subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. We greatly appreciate that. And you can always connect with me on social media. Reach out to me on Facebook at Skyview Coaching and on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitter, X, and Instagram. It's at Ann Papayotti. One of these days, I'll catch up to all the changes with that. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and your topics that you'd like for us to explore more of here on Soul CPR, because this show is for you and we're going to make them happen. So until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. I thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.